practicing combat search and rescue, fell off a fast rope, so shattered L1 vertebrae. I don't know where I'd be without paralyzed veterans. I've only seen that now.
Unite through struggle, that's what the Marine Corps and service is all about. You get tight and those bonds just get stronger and stronger the more you struggle together, and the harder the hardship. And I don't know if it gets any harder than being a quadriplegic, so we instantly bond.
Paralyzed Veterans of America is a nonprofit, and it gets no federal funding.
And we provide every service free of charge to every veteran and caregiver that we support.
Paralyzed Veteran and PVA Executive Director Sherman Gillums Jr.
Every life, every success, every recovery, it's tied to the initial investment you've had in us.
To learn more, visit pva.org, a public service message from Paralyzed Veterans of America.
And welcome back to more right here on Herbally Yours, where we bring you the latest information about many, many different aspects of natural living. And today we have as our guest Melissa Gallico, and we're talking about her book, The Hidden Cause of Acne, how toxic water is affecting your health and what you can do about it. And Melissa is a former military intelligence officer, a Fulbright scholar, and with the FBI was with the FBI for years. So she knows how to investigate. That's for sure. I would say that's certainly a strong point of your skill set, Melissa. And you decided to use that and look into this personal issue where you found that in the United States you were getting all kinds of outbreaks. And as you travel to other countries, your skin seemed to clear up.
Yeah, so that was the biggest clue for me, the travel. And I've talked to a lot of people who've noticed that as well, just changes in their acne when they travel. And that's why I started looking at the water, thinking it was something in the water. My first thought was lead, because that's the main contaminant, I think, that you just naturally think of in water. And I didn't see any correlation there. And then once I thought it was the fluoride, it was very easy to test it just by drinking non-fluoridated water. And I immediately saw a huge improvement in my skin. It didn't completely go away right away because I didn't realize fluoride is in so many other areas of our diet. But I saw such an improvement that I knew I was onto something right there.
That's an amazing thing. So what about the rate of adult acne in this country?
So it's definitely on the rise. There was I think people assume it's like a teenage condition because maybe 50 or 60 years ago it really was when they first started fluoridating. But now adult acne is so common. There was just an article in the New York Times about it last month, and the dermatologist was saying, it used to be half of the people that came into my clinic, and now it's just rare to have someone that doesn't have adult acne. Harvard did a study in 2012, and they found that 45% of women in their 20s have acne. 20% of women in their 30s and 12% of women in their 40s. So even 40s and beyond, people are still suffering with adult acne. And that makes total sense in the fluoride theory because fluoride accumulates in bone tissue and it stays there for decades. The National Academy of Science estimates that the half-life of fluoride in bone is 20 years. So that means half of the fluoride that is stored in your bones from fluoride in your diet today will still be there 20 years from now. So it makes sense that we're seeing these changes over time where more and more people are having a reaction to fluoride because we're being exposed to it at greater rates.
Well, I mean, they started putting this in many, many years ago, decades ago.
They did. And it's just, it's really increasing. I think a lot of it has to do with pesticides because fluoride is also used as a pesticide, which people don't know, and they're using it more and more. And you can see that we're being exposed to more of it because of the rates of dental fluorosis. They do a survey about every 10 years. The CDC does a survey on dental fluorosis, which is a discoloring of the tooth enamel that's caused by exposure to too much fluoride when your teeth are developing. So when I was a child, and I do have dental fluorosis, it was about, I think like under 20% of the children in my demographic, in the 80s had dental fluorosis. And they redid those surveys in 2004, and it had doubled to 41%.
Well, wait, let's share that with our listeners. Not everybody knows what dental fluorosis is, so please explain that.
So it's a discoloring of the tooth enamel. A lot of times it manifests as like bright white spots on the tooth, or maybe an opaque quality around the edges of the tooth, or it can even be brown stains when it's more severe. You can Google it and you can see pictures of it on Wikipedia or on different dental websites. It's very common. You could ask your dentist. Most dentists will be able to recognize it right away. And they just did another study that was released in February of this year, and it was in the Journal of Dental Hygiene. They looked at 16 and 17-year-olds, and they found that over 60% had dental fluorosis. So that just shows we're being exposed to it more and more, and it's accumulating in our bodies.
Now, how can someone tell if their water is fluoridated?
The easiest way to tell is to look up your annual water quality report. So if you're on city water, they're required to do a report for you every year about the different contaminants in your water supply, and fluoride should be listed on there. If it's not listed on there, that probably means it wasn't detected. You can call them and verify, but usually they'll write it on there and they'll say ND if it's not detected, or if they add fluoride to the water, it will say it there, and it will say the amount that's added. So right now, 0.7 parts per million is the amount that the CDC recommends, and that's way too high. I experienced really bad breakouts with that. They used to recommend up to 1.2 parts per million, and there was 2 times when I lived in towns that fluoridated at that amount, and that correlated with when my skin was the absolute worst. So they just changed their recommendations a few years ago based on these skyrocketing rates of dental fluorosis. They changed it and they only recommend 0.7, but some towns still do more than that. So it's definitely worth it to call your water supplier and ask, or just Google the name of your town along with water quality report, and you can usually find the report that way.
Okay, that's the easy thing to do. And I noticed that,
Yeah.
It's a very easy thing to do. You just call your town, wherever you live, and they are supposed to be sending out water reports every year. And maybe you're not on the email, or maybe you get it in the mail and you throw it out. So it's actually a pretty easy thing to track down. And then it says right in there if the water is fluoridated or not. Now, are some places have to have fluoridation legally, or how can people take action to perhaps stop the fluoridation in their own water supply?
So it depends on what state you're in. The CDC just recommends it. They don't require it, but some states do require it. For example, Kentucky requires fluoride in their water supply. And so to get it out of your water supply there, they're going to have to change that state mandate, which a lot of states leave it up to the local water suppliers to decide. So that's a lot easier if you live in one of those states where the town can decide if they want fluoride or not.
Well, I want you to know that you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, and my guest today is Melissa Gallico, former FBI agent, and we're talking about her new book, The Hidden Cause of Acne, How Toxic Water is Affecting Your Health and What You Can Do About It. And I was sharing that I was very involved with my town, and we're talking about over 40 years ago, to stop the inclusion of fluoride and even chlorine, except when necessary, when the bacterial count was high, because these are all toxic compounds that you're dumping into your water if you're just drinking it without filtering it. And the other thing is, in my book, Cycles of Life, Herbs for Women, I have a full and complete protocol using herbs that really, really help to clear up acne and clear up the skin. And of course, there's dietary recommendations. Pure water is certainly one of them. And thank you so much for putting this information out for people, because I'm sure many people have no idea about that.
It's true. It's really not well known. So I really appreciate you having me on your show to spread the word about fluoride and acne.
Now, what about organic food? Could that help cut down on the amount that someone's ingesting?
Yes, it's definitely a good idea to switch to organic food because I mentioned it is used as a pesticide. And there are certain products that tend to use this pesticide. It's called cryolite, but it's a fluoride-based pesticide. So grape products, you definitely want to buy organic grape products because that's the most common crop that they use fluoride pesticides on. And then even things that you wouldn't think of like poultry. Poultry is very high in fluoride because just like with humans, it accumulates in their bones. So when it's not raised organically, they're allowed to use fluoride on their feed up to 130 parts per million fluoride. Just to put that in perspective, the water supply is fluoridated at 0.7 parts per million. So their food can have 130 parts per million fluoride on it. And actually, no one's even testing those fluoride levels to make sure that they're being enforced. So we really don't know how much fluoride is on poultry feed, but I know that some of my worst breakouts were from poultry products that contain shards of the bone. So like when it's called mechanically deboned meat. So any like chicken hot dogs, chicken nuggets, chicken soup made from the bones will be very high in fluoride because that fluoride will, when you're simmering the bones, it will end up in the soup.
Wow, that's interesting because now bone broth is all the rage.
It is, yeah. So I always tell people, make sure to buy the best quality organic chicken bones you can find before you make broth out of chicken bones.
That is true. And what great information. What do you think first steps are, and how did your skin clear up when you became aware and basically did all you could to remove fluoride from your water and from your life?
So it took me a little longer. I've heard from people who are able to do it in like 2 weeks once they realize the fluoride connection, but it all depends on how many different sources of fluoride you're being exposed to. And also, I created a cheat sheet for my book so people can just like go on my website. When you sign up for my newsletter, it sends you this one-page cheat sheet with all the sources of fluoride. I think if I had a cheat sheet, maybe I would have been able to clear my skin a little faster. But for me, it did take several months of trial and error. Like I didn't realize the poultry connection. That one really got me. I didn't realize things like beer. If you drink a beer from a city and they used fluoridated water, that beer will be high in fluoride, obviously, because they don't remove the fluoride. But then if you choose a product from like Belgium or a place where they don't fluoridate, then it will be low in fluoride. So that was very tricky for me to figure out. Wine was another one, as I mentioned. Wine, fluoride is used on grape crops. So certain wines from California are very high in fluoride. And it was the Europeans who noticed this. They were importing California wine and they were like, why is this so high in fluoride? And they tried to set a limit. And the California vineyards, they appealed it. They had it tripled to 3 parts per million, and they still weren't able to meet that standard. So it's really high in fluoride, and it took me a while to figure that out. I have pictures I was documenting this on my MacBook.
Wait a minute. We have to really come to an end here, Melissa,
okay.
because we're just about out of time. But I do want you to shout out for people how they can find your website, your book, and some of these handouts that you provide.
So hiddencauseofacne.com is the website. You can see my pictures on there. It shows you exactly how long it took to clear my skin. There's the newsletter sign up there. So if you want the cheat sheet, it'll automatically be sent to you. And I also have a private Facebook group for people that are trying to limit fluoride in their diet or get it out of their water supply. And we just help each other sharing information and encouragement.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in once again to Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, you can email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi, at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.